Call to order and roll call. Good evening. This is a special meeting of the Oakley City Council. Oakley City Council. That's great. This meeting is called to order at 6:30 p.m. Councilmember Shaw,
Here.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Here.
Councilmember Henderson,
Here.
Councilmember Fuller,
Here.
and I am Mayor Aaron Meadows. Item 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, public comments. At this time, public comments will be heard for items not on the agenda. I have some public comments that were submitted online. Please complete a blue speaker card located in the lobby and submit to the city clerk. The time limit to speak is 3 minutes. The time limit will be monitored by the timer located in front of the mayor's seat. When 1 minute remains on the timer, it will beep once as a reminder to complete comments before your time expires. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, or other outbursts so that everyone may have an opportunity to be heard. Note that due to provisions of state law, the council may not engage in dialogue regarding comments. Staff may be directed to respond to the persons making public comments. I don't see any public comments or blue cards. Like I said, we've had 3 online comments that have been submitted. Item 4, regular calendar. 4.1, adoption of a resolution approving the reorganization of the city, including the amendment to the salary schedule for fiscal year 23-24, authorizing the addition and removal of specific job classifications, and a budget amendment to appropriate funds to specified salary accounts. Ms. Tada.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm just going to jump in real quick and make a few comments before Ms. Tejeda gives the presentation. And just wanted to say I wanted to acknowledge the immense amount of work that has gone into this item that is being presented to you tonight, not just by Ms. Tejeda, but by many in the City Hall. This restructure and this organizational plan that we're going to lay out tonight really addresses what I believe to meet the needs of the city currently for today, but also meet the needs of the city well into the future. So with those comments and that premise, I hand this over to Ms. Tejeda to run through the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. We're going to walk you through this. There's going to be lots of moving parts, but in the end, I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. So with that, we will get started. Oh, yeah. All right, so we're going to start with what kind of the goals of the reorganization are. It's to create more structure within each department at the city, to reduce the number of directors in the organization, not make it so top-heavy, so we can have an additional layer of managers to help with those day-to-day operations within each department. It will add levels to make it more typical of a city, of a structure of a city our size, and it will allow for greater efficiencies within the departments. It allows for the employees to grow within our organization. It will create, hopefully, retention and succession planning well into the future. And the reorganization, just as a side note, will happen over several years as budget allows. And we'll kind of go through that as we walk through the program tonight. So our proposed reorganization, we'll go through the departments and the divisions. So we would have the department of the Office of the City Manager. The divisions underneath there would be the City Manager's office, the City Clerk's office, the Economic Development Department or Division, and the Information Technology Division. Next, we would have Administrative Services Department, which would house Finance, Human Resources, and Recreation. And then we would have Community Development, so no change to the structure there. It would continue to be Building, Code Enforcement, and Planning. And Public Works, again, no change to the structure there. Engineering, Facilities, Parks, and Streets and Storm Drains. So this is kind of our overall organizational chart. You see this every year in the budget, so there's been a little bit of a change to it. You'll see under the assistant city manager there on the right-hand side, it rolls city clerk into there, and then you'll see the four major departments underneath it. We won't talk about city attorney department tonight. There is no change proposed there, and we will also not talk about the police department tonight because there hasn't been any structural change to the police department. So we'll start with the office of the city manager. So in fiscal year 24, our current fiscal year, we will roll the city clerk's department under the assistant city manager. We will remove 0.75 FTE, which is an administrative assistant classification, and we will add an in-house IT manager that we plan to hire towards the end of fiscal year 2024, which is spring kind of 2024. In fiscal year 2025, we would create kind of a hybrid IT staff. We would have our in-house IT manager, but we would still contract our help desk. And then also in 2025, with that, we would be able to reduce the cost of our IT contract. So this is what the office of the city manager would look like on an org chart. So you have your assistant city manager who will oversee the city clerk, the deputy city clerk, office assistant, the IT manager, and also the contract IT help desk. And economic development remains under the city manager's office. And overall, you will see we're adding 0.25 FTE to the department. With this reorg, it's adding a full-time IT manager, but it's reducing by the 0.75 admin assistant that is no longer in the department. So moving on to administrative services, in fiscal year 2024, we would remove the finance director and the recreation director classifications. We would reclassify the HR director to an administrative services director. We would add a recreation manager and an HR manager classification. We would add an office assistant classification. We would reclassify the accounting manager to finance manager. We would add an accountant classification. We would reclassify an accounting assistant to an accounting technician. We would reclassify an HR assistant to an administrative technician, as well as make it a full-time position instead of part-time. We would change the title of a senior accounting technician to a payroll specialist, and we would remove the HR technician classification. So we'll look at that on an org chart here. You will see the recreation department. This does add a full-time FTE to the recreation department. We would have a recreation manager, a recreation coordinator, which we already have. We would change the admin assistant to an assistant recreation coordinator to help with those events and programs at the rec center. And then we would add an office assistant to help with all of that. In the HR division, we would hire an HR manager instead of having a technician. And then we would also increase that HR assistant to an admin tech. That admin tech would be full-time. They would spend half their time with HR and half their time with the finance division. And you'll see in finance, there's no change to the FTEs there. So although we didn't change the FTEs, we did change the structure. We would have a finance manager, and our accounting technician used to be an accounting assistant, our payroll specialist, that part-time admin tech, and this would allow us to add an accountant, which is a much-needed position over in finance right now. In our community development department, we would add a chief building official classification, and then we would change the title of our permit technician 2 to a senior permit technician. We would upgrade an admin assistant to full-time. So that admin assistant used to be shared half-time with community development and half-time with finance. This puts that person in community development full-time. And with that, when they were in finance half-time, they did business licensing. Business licensing and planning go hand in hand. So this will move business licensing to the community development department. Reclassify a permit technician 1 to a permit technician. So we're dropping kind of the 1s and 2s. Title change, the code enforcement officer 1 to a code enforcement officer, and we would remove the code enforcement officer 2 classification. And also we would recognize reductions in cost to our contracts that we currently use that our building official, once on board, would be able to handle in-house. So this is what the community development department would look like. Your chief building official would oversee code enforcement, building inspectors, and permit technicians. We would have that full-time admin assistant, and then the planning division remains unchanged. And this adds 1.5 FTEs to the entire department, and that is the chief building official and the half-time of the admin assistant. In the Public Works Department Engineering Division, we would reclassify a principal engineer to an engineering manager. We would title change the capital projects engineer to an associate engineer, and we would also title change the administrative specialist to an administrative supervisor. And then in fiscal year 2025, if budget allows, we would recommend adding and reclassifying the engineering tech to an assistant engineer. And then similarly over in the Parks Division for Public Works, a lot of this will just be about title changes. This is taking the concept of having parks and landscape maintenance and streets maintenance, and now we're going to create it as a public works maintenance, so they will be trained in both and be able to work in either area as needed by the city. So this will change the title of Parks and Landscape Maintenance Manager to a Public Works Maintenance Manager, reclassify a Parks and Landscape Maintenance Foreman to a Public Works Maintenance Foreman, title change a Street Maintenance Foreman to a Public Works Maintenance Foreman, and then, of course, title change the Public Works Maintenance Worker to, Parks and Landscape Maintenance Worker to a Public Works Maintenance Worker. And then in fiscal year 2025, again, if budget would allow, to add a Public Works Maintenance Supervisor classification. And here's what the org chart would look like for that. So you have your Public Works maintenance, which would include a supervisor, foreman, workers, facility maintenance, custodians, and our park ranger. And then we would have the administrative supervisor and the admin assistant, and then engineering manager, who would oversee the associate engineer, the assistant engineer, and the associate engineer still oversees the public works inspector. So this does add one position to parks in 2025, and that's that supervisor if budget allows. So when we started looking at costs, the fiscal year 2024 cost is actually very minimal when you look at how many positions we're allowed to add. Staff is requesting to add a total of 2.75 FTEs. It's anticipated that cost will be approximately $50,000 to the fiscal year 2024 budget. And kind of how we got there is we planned the reclassifications and the administrative services staff to be hired in October. So that's what we calced when we're looking at costs. New classifications for chief building official and IT manager, we only calced them for half a year, anticipating we wouldn't bring them on until the spring of 2024. Staff anticipates a reduction to service contracts that will offset cost of salary. And just as kind of informational, if we had proposed all of this to start at the 1st of July when this budget, it would have been approximately $150,000 in cost, in additional cost to the budget. And again, that's kind of, we're taking higher level positions that are at top step and replacing them with lower level positions that will come in at a step A or B. So those costs will grow with the budget every year, but that is the anticipated first initial cost. And then fiscal year 2025 and beyond, classifications approved. So we're asking tonight for you to approve the classification for the fiscal year 2025, but it will not approve any funding for those positions. So those will come back to council during budget study sessions. If we believe that the budget can hold those positions, we will propose them at that time. So tonight it's just approving the classification. It's not approving any funding. So approving the resolution in front of you tonight would do a few things. It would approve the new organizational structure as provided in the organizational charts. It would approve the classification and salary related to classifications. So you'll notice the resolution doesn't approve job descriptions. We provide those as context for you to help you make an informed decision when you're looking at those classifications and salary. And then it authorizes a budget appropriation of $50,000 from the general fund undesignated balance for fiscal year 2024. And then lastly, I just wanted to make a note or clarify a few things. All of our job descriptions have a statement in them under our physical demands and working environment. It says the conditions herein are representative of those that must be met by an employee to successfully perform the essential functions of this job. Reasonable accommodations may be made to enable individuals with disabilities to perform the essential job functions. This is pretty standard language that we see in many job descriptions. A concern was brought to us earlier today by Dr. Fuller. So I did reach out to our attorney just to see if there was any other language that was potentially to be provided. And the language here in the red is what was recommended to replace the sentence in red. The city will engage in timely, good faith, interactive process to identify reasonable accommodations to enable qualified individuals to perform the essential job functions. So this is more just informational that we will update job descriptions, and it will be across the board job descriptions with the new language provided by the attorney today. And with that, I am open for any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from council? Vice Mayor Williams?
Thank you for all this work. I know it was probably so much. I do have a special interest in when you were talking about the business licenses. I've heard that our business license are 4 to 6 weeks now that it's taking to get those approved. So potentially this shift will accelerate that?
4 to 6 weeks to get a new license?
Yes.
Or to, okay.
License.
I'll have to look at that.
I don't know if that's the accurate timeline. That's just the like auto reply you get back.
I think that the auto reply is meant for renewals. So we're in the renewal process right now.
Okay.
All licenses renew at the same time period, which makes it really difficult when we only have a half-time person dedicated to business licensing. And so, you know, we have hundreds and hundreds of licenses that come in. And so the 4 to 6 week process is to get the payments processed and the business license mailed out. It's not necessarily for a new business, I don't believe. Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe this will help with that process, but I also believe our new software will be tremendously helpful. People will be able to renew their business license online.
Yes.
So, which we need desperately.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Fuller?
Yes, thank you. Just could you tell us the law firm that came up with the reasonable accommodations? Not the second one. I would like to give them credit for what they came up with.
We work with Liebert Cassidy Whitmore.
Okay, thank you. I'll discuss it later, but thank you.
Any other council questions? Seeing none. I don't see any public comments. So at this time, council want to deliberate or make a motion?
Liberation.
Councilmember Fuller?
Well, first, I'd like to say I'm touched. I mean, I'm very touched about the way we've restructured the accommodations line. It's very welcoming. It's very open. It shows that we're interactive and it's welcoming. And I'm touched. It shows what can be done. The University of Hawaii at Manawa has a Center of Disability Studies has a conference coming up soon, and the theme is beyond compliance to acceptance, and this is there. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Mr. Mirahani has done the same thing with his play equipment that we've seen used well, so I wanted to say that. The second one is, and I've said this before, and sure as well know, but when I sat in the audience, when I used to read the paper, when I heard we're lean and mean, that really bothered me. And when I talked with the city manager then, Mr. Montgomery, and a couple of others, why do you go with this? And they said, well, you know, public workers, they don't get enough, and we can tie them together, and we don't have any job descriptions, so we can move them around. And I began hearing about some of the job descriptions. Of course, I was a little upset, because I've worked in the public sector all but 1 year in my adult life, and that 1 year was in business, and I did not want to be in business. So, but I want to acknowledge what the Mr. McMurray has done, Ms. Tejeda, others have done to bring this to fruition. I think we have job descriptions, we have something to put in, we have standards to be made, we have a team to come together, and I anticipate that we'll move much beyond this, and we could have a lot more, how can I say it, more of the family attitude and more creative production out of our staff. So I wanted to thank that and acknowledge what's been done. I know this job was, well, I'm glad you did it. So thank you.
Any other deliberation or motion?
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. And just thank you for all the work you guys put into it. I mean, I think we're definitely going in the right direction. Item 5, adjourn. There are no further business items. This meeting's adjourned till our next meeting will be Tuesday, September 12th, here at 6:30. Thank you.